we've made it. Today's meditation is the final of Book 2. It also marks the end of what I'm going to call Season 1 of this podcast. At the end of this episode, I'm going to be taking a break until June 15th. In that time, I'm going to be putting together the ebook, which we've already talked about, and which will be given for free to anyone who has signed up for it. And there's a link in the show notes of this episode to do that if you haven't done it already. I may also, in that time, choose to batch record Book 3, which contains 16 meditations, just one less than Book 2, but those meditations are much longer than the ones featured in Book 2. Also, there's a new website at stoicismpod.com. You can find, for the time being, transcripts there as well as individual episode pages, so you can leave comments on previous episodes and ask questions, and it's just a new way to interact. Aside from that, and for now, there's not much going on there, but as I said a few weeks ago, I have more things planned, so add it to your favorites and keep an eye on it if you'd like to see more content from me in the future. As I said at the outset, today's meditation is the final of Book 2, and it reads as follows. Human life, duration, momentary, nature, changeable, perception, dim, condition of body, decaying, soul, spinning around, fortune, unpredictable, lasting fame, uncertain, summary, the body and its parts are a river, the soul a dream and mist, life is warfare and a journey far from home, lasting reputation is oblivion. Then what can guide us? Only philosophy, which means making sure that the power within stays safe and free from assault, superior to pleasure and pain, doing nothing randomly or dishonestly or with imposture, not dependent on anyone else's doing something or not doing something, and making sure that it accepts what happens and what is dealt as coming from the same place it came from. And above all, that it accepts death in a cheerful spirit, as nothing but the dissolution of the elements from which each living thing is composed. If it doesn't hurt the individual elements to change continually into one another, why are people afraid of them all changing and separating? It is a natural thing, and nothing natural is evil. I think it's important to remember that, though I do find a lot of value in this closing meditation from him, Marcus is on the battlefield for nearly, or if not the entirety, of Book 2. He is seeing things that are grim. He's seeing death and violence and unnatural struggle, as he would put it, and he's seeing all of this as he writes, or the day leading up to him writing, or whatever it is, the night before, etc., etc. It's probably also worth noting that the Romans and Marcus were almost overwhelmed and defeated by the Quadi. Remember, he's writing this during his time on the battlefield with the Quadi. That's the battle I'm referring to. And while, this isn't a history podcast, it's worth noting that philosopher king or not, Marcus would have been both under extreme stress and duress during this time. I think, and this is just me opining, of course, that's why we see the meditations move from rather lighthearted at the outset to somewhat more pessimistic or dark in tone as we move through Book 2. You may have noticed that. Now that said, let's look at what Marcus is telling us in the closing words of this book. They may be rather grim, but they're also rather correct in my estimation. Speaking in almost curt language at the outset, Marcus gives us a kind of pre-flight checklist delivery of human life. It is momentary, it is changeable and subject to the winds of chaos, its perception is poor, and here I think he uses perception as our individual perception as living humans and not his perception of humanity necessarily. Our bodies are in a constant state of decaying. Our souls are wild and uncontrolled, flitting here and there, doing whatever they want as we allow them to take the reins. Our fortune, good or bad, is unknowable, and our ability to achieve any sort of lasting legacy is uncertain. Now, notwithstanding that Marcus in this final meditation wades a little too boldly into the realm of science as a philosopher for my taste, is he wrong about any of this? I don't think so. I think he's as close to absolutely correct as one can get. Our lives are momentary in the grand scheme of time. At that scale, our lives are shorter than the blink of an eye. But we forget that because we're busy being human, busy being focused on all the things we humans focus on day to day. Marcus is reminding us that perhaps we should remember how little time we have and how insignificant we are in that grand scheme of things. He's also reminding us that there are things we can't control. that we are subject to things outside of our control messing up our plans. For example, we think we're getting married next month, but our soon-to-be spouse is in a terrible accident a week before the wedding and dies. Terrible things like that, sure, but also red lights when we're in a hurry, and bad weather when we've planned a picnic with the family. We have got to keep our heads in moments like these. We can't allow our emotions to send us into a tailspin, causing us to then voluntarily give up control of the things we do have power and influence over, namely, our decisions and our behaviors. And lastly, what can guide us through a life that is so absolutely wild and untamed? Philosophy, of course. Choose your flavor. It doesn't need to be Stoicism, though Marcus would have certainly thought most highly of his particular chosen philosophy, to be sure, but any set of rules and guidelines which instruct you on how to act and behave during your life so that you can stay focused, stay useful, and stay in alignment, let's say, with your personal values, are providing you with an incredibly important foundation and framework for life and living. And I bet, if we pressed him, Marcus would have agreed with that. Thank you for listening to this final episode of Season 1 of Practical Stoicism. I'm going to take a 1-month break. I will be back in June. If you're listening to this later, you don't care about this break because it's already passed. But I will be back in June for the rest of you, and we will continue on to Book 3, and I'm looking forward to seeing you then. Until then, check out the new website, subscribe to get the free ebook, links in the description, and take care.